Welcome to Hyperfixation Investigations, the podcast where two neurospicy best friends take time 2 Saturdays a month to info dump their research deep dive of the week.
Lovingly produced and copyrighted by Wolf and Stag Productions.
Today's fun fact is, from early October to early March, the North Pole experiences total darkness. So how do polar orbiting satellites still capture imagery of the Arctic during that period? Well, interestingly enough, the VIIRS day-night band, which is aboard the 2 satellites in the Joint Polar Satellite System constellation, is very sensitive to low levels of visible light at night. It can see the nighttime city lights, the light from a single ship at sea, auroras, and even the glow of Earth's atmosphere. This band is particularly useful for forecasters in Alaska because it allows them to see low-level clouds, sea ice, and snow during the long nights of the Arctic winter. And this is thanks to the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Services.
Good morning, I'm Josh, and I'll be captaining this week's episode, Many North Poles. You can never have just one. Part 1 of our mini-series, Home Planet Happenings.
Good evening, I'm Kara, and I'm just along for the ride. For those of you joining us for the first time, how things work here is, Josh will be leading us through a mini lecture on the topic, and we will discuss and ask questions throughout.
Expect a lot of tangents. We switch off duties each week, so next week expect Kara to take the helm.
Now to our regularly scheduled program. Josh, what have you been hyperfixating on this week?
Well, with the fading of the winter holiday season in favor of the harsh cold and general snowy malaise that usually accompanies
A
the
Midwestern
remainder.
winter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we move into that element of the remainder of my favorite season of the year,
Yes.
considering we didn't release any episodes in December, I figured it would be at least reasonably appropriate time to do an episode on the North Pole,
Ooh.
and the North Pole, and the North Pole, and of course the various South Poles.
The various?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We'll probably only barely touch on, Santa's mythical North Pole towards the end.
Okay.
I'm going to start us off actually with the geographic poles, and then we'll talk about the magnetic poles.
Great. Okay.
Yes. So, spoilers though, there are actually even more poles than that. Expect some weird other bits throughout each segment today.
Great.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be, I promise it's less complicated than it seems, even though it is more complicated than I'm going to bother to get into today.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So,
Fair.
yes. So let's start with the true geographic North and South poles. Word choice is very important today,
Okay.
with the exact naming of these things, because there are a lot of concepts that get lumped together with almost the same names. So
Of course there are.
I'm going to try to be very specific, starting with these sections of the poles that people are likely to know, and we'll move out from there.
Got it.
So the true geographic North and South poles, which are sometimes also called terrestrial poles, are the exact mathematical north and south tips of the world as the Earth spins.
Got it.
They are directly opposite each other, and anyone who has ever tried to, or has just seen someone else, spin a basketball on the tip of their finger
Yeah.
knows that at the center of the spin, you can hold the basketball just there, and it won't really fall off. Basically, these are the points where if a giant spun the Earth like a basketball, the poles are where they would put their fingertips
Okay.
on either end. These are the points through which the axis that the Earth spins on runs.
Goes through. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Got it.
Yes. So all planets and other large celestial bodies in our solar system have designated north and south poles centered at their axis of spin. However, fun thing to point out, there isn't really a north or south in space, right? Like geographically speaking, it's all kind of
Yeah.
nonsense.
Right.
So when designating names for these things, we humans did as we have always done and just named the poles of other planets relative to our own.
Of course we did.
Yeah, so whichever pole is pointing more or less the same direction as our North Pole would be considered the North Pole for that planet too.
Okay then.
We have known that these true geographic poles existed since the moment Pythagoras proposed the idea of a round Earth, right? Since any round object must have a point that is furthest north and a point that is furthest south. Yet it was not until the early 20th century that these poles were actually reached by people traveling to them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Also, side note, the Earth technically is not a perfect sphere, but an oblate spheroid. And as a pedantic science person, I must point that out.
Of course, yes.
We are just barely a little bit wider around the middle than a true sphere. The South Pole was officially first visited by humans on December 14th, 1911, when Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen, which, side note, Roald Amundsen was also the first navigator to successfully traverse the infamous Northwest Passage.
Great song.
Aboard the ship the Gjoa.
Are we going to do an episode on the Northwest Passage as a sea shanty?
I would love to do an episode on the Northwest Passage because that is one of my favorite songs by Canadian folk legend Stan Rogers.
Have you heard the new version that the Wellerman put out with Rose Betts?
No.
Duetting with them on it?
Well, I know what I'm listening to on the way home.
I think it is. You'll like it.
I do enjoy the Wellerman.
Yes.
Which also, side note, for anyone who doesn't know, the Northwest Passage is, of course, a treacherous and icy sea route from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, traveling through the Arctic.
Yeah, which is not a fun place to go through.
But the idea of this was originally that trade from Europe to Asia would be faster going in a straight shot through the Arctic Circle. And although the idea of the Northwest Passage was first proposed in Rome in the 2nd century, apparently, explorers had only actively been trying to forge a Northwest Passage since the end of the 15th century.
I mean, that's a long time for it to take that long. Yeah, anybody who's ever been anywhere near the Arctic Circle can tell you that was not going to work out well.
No.
The first few times.
Not surprising that it took more than 400 years for it to actually come to fruition once people started trying.
Yeah.
Which also, I know we're already in a tangent, but side note to the tangent, according to history.com, and that is like the History Channel, those people, the Northwest Passage route that is actually being traveled today was in 2007 completely ice-free for the first time in recorded history.
And that's not a good thing.
Nope. Thanks, climate change.
Thanks, billionaires.
Ugh. Anywho, already an experienced and lauded explorer for his work with the Northwest Passage, Amundsen actually arrived to the South Pole a mere month ahead of his British rival, Robert Falcon Scott, who, yes, truly rival.
I love that.
Who arrived
give me the ages when we just had real rivalries. I want it back.
I mean, if you're a big fan of reading academic papers, there's still some out there.
Which we are, if you can't tell.
There are still some crazy ones out there of people just arguing through academic paper against somebody for years.
No, you're a dumbass. No, you're a dumbass. Yeah.
No, your theory's bonkers. How dare you? Robert Falcon Scott arrived to the South Pole on January 18th, 1912, approximately 1 month later. Oof.
He's a Brit. I can't be on his side. Sorry.
No, it's just, he died on the way back. So, really adding insult to injury here, Kara.
I'm good at that.
Yeah, I know. Ooh, so this is part of a historical era known to Antarctic researchers as the Heroic Age, during which many countries were attempting to beat each other to the chance of exploring new and yet undiscovered regions of the extreme north and extreme south of the world. And Amundsen's expedition ended in victorious elation, including apparently being sent personal congratulations from President Teddy Roosevelt and King George V.
Okay, but let's be honest. Roosevelt makes sense.
Yes.
He would so go if he could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt? Absolutely. And as I alluded to a minute ago, thanks to your laughter, Scott's expedition to the pole, it included broken down motor sleds, having to put down their ponies, sending much of the team back before reaching the pole, and the remaining 5 members, including Scott himself.
5 members went to the Antarctic?
No, 5 people did not go back, including himself. He and 4 companions refused to turn back. The rest of the team, I don't know how many people came originally, but the rest of the team trudged back on foot, no ponies, broken motor sleds, back to base camp.
Yikes.
At least 3 of them, including Scott himself, succumbed to the cold in a tent only 11 miles from their base camp on their way back, with his body not to be found until later that year.
Well, I mean...
Not surprising,
yeah.
And in recognition for his sacrifice and his attempt, Scott was posthumously knighted by King George V.
That's nice.
So, Yeah, it's
That's Queen Elizabeth's father.
yes. Yes, so that's the first expedition to the South Pole. Now, figuring out who got to the North Pole first is actually highly debated.
Good.
Part of this issue lies with the changing geography of the Arctic Circle,
Okay, fair enough.
because while the South Pole has Antarctica, right, an actual land mass to rest on, the North Pole is located in an ocean
Right.
that is routinely covered in floes of ice. So the geography and the location of the ice can shift a lot
Right.
over time. Robert Peary is usually the name that historically has been referenced as the first explorer to reach the North Pole on foot in 1909,
Okay.
after trying and failing in both 1898 and 1905.
Dedicated.
However, Frederick Cook claimed at the time to actually have reached the North Pole 1 year earlier in 1908, and Frederick Cook had actually accompanied Peary on an expedition to Greenland several years earlier. And in 1906, Cook claimed to be the first person to reach the peak of Mount Denali in Alaska. Now, apparently, some Alaskan mountaineers and his own climbing partner
Disabused anybody of that notion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the very least, they shed doubt
Yeah.
on Cook's claim of being the first to reach the peak of Mount Denali.
I would also like to note that with those kinds of things, you have no idea what indigenous populations have or have not achieved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's also that. First people to get to the actual North Pole. Probably indigenous Greenlanders, but we're never going to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any record of that.
Right.
So we're...
Yeah.
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 And even if there was record, we probably would have burned it. In 1909, the University of Copenhagen reviewed Cook's records of his North Pole expedition and ruled that his North Pole claim be unproven. In 1911, the matter of whether Peary or Cook reached the North Pole first became a matter of investigation by the United States House of Representatives Naval Affairs Subcommittee?
Why?
I don't know.
Just us involving ourselves in things that don't matter again? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Cook was, I believe, American. I think.
Regardless.
Oh, yeah. Regardless.
It
It's
doesn't
silly.
matter.
Now, as far as I could find, it looks like the subcommittee did side with Peary, hence why his name gets brought up most often in these discussions.
Okay.
However, Peary's own expedition journals were kept locked up by the National Geographic Service and his family, and were not used as evidence in favor of his claim. Rather, his argument focused specifically on discrediting Cook's claim,
Interesting.
which adds a wrinkle.
Yeah.
Side note, the National Geographic Service, and yes, that National Geographic, was one of Peary's...
Sponsors?
Yes.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
hang on to that. And here we get to yet another person who may have reached the pole before Peary. His exploration partner, Matthew Henson. Henson's memoir and the words of their Inuit guides actually put Henson as the first to reach the pole, in part because he was pushing ahead while Peary was lagging behind. This was the case when Peary had them set up camp for the night,
Okay.
and then double-checked his calculations in the morning to determine how close they were to the pole. Peary claimed that they had in fact reached the pole and stuck the flag in the ground just behind where they had pitched camp. So if this version of events is true, that would put Henson, a black man, as the first to reach the North Pole.
Well, we couldn't have
not
that.
Peary. Yes. Not to mention at least a few of their 4 Inuit guides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I said.
Unsurprisingly, racism quite likely takes a large role here. Rather expected, though, especially given the colonial origins of discovering new lands.
Yeah.
That the white man in charge of the expedition is the one usually assumed to get credit immediately thereafter, rather than the indigenous guides or the black partner of the expedition.
Ooh, that riles me.
Yeah, as well it should. However, weirdly, even Henson's potential claim is, unfortunately, discredited when National Geographic in the 80s.
The 80s.
The 80s.
This is like 70 years later. Great.
They admitted that Peary had likely lied about having reached the pole to boost his own reputation.
like they didn't even get within shooting distance of it, or...
It is unclear.
Great.
From what I could find, it was unclear.
Okay.
So, who actually got to the North Pole first? Weirdly, most likely a 1948 Soviet science expedition that was largely off the books for decades.
A Soviet exploration off the books? Who knew?
Yeah, it was either a black man who went largely uncredited for decades, or
An Inuit or
yes,
a Soviet.
Yeah.
Great.
Now, weird feature of the geographic poles. They do shift slightly.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth has a bit of a wobble. Well, two wobbles, actually. It causes the angle of rotation to shift ever so slightly. You can kind of imagine the Earth as like a top or a dreidel or a Beyblade
Mm-hmm.
spinning around and around, but not perfectly stationary in how it spins. So, like, all tops tend to drift and wobble a little as they spin, even when their spin is stable, and the Earth is just doing the same thing. No conditions for anything in the universe are perfect.
Yeah.
So you're never going to have something behaving exactly as you would want it to in a perfect, simple model. It's always going to have a little weird factor thrown in there. The Chandler wobble, as this is named, so named for the 19th century American astronomer Seth Carlo Chandler, although technically the discoverer. The wobble was predicted in 1765 by Swiss mathematician Leonhard Euler.
Okay.
The Chandler wobble describes a 433-day or 14-month cycle where the poles move up to approximately 20 feet. However, the second wobble that I kind of mentioned a second ago adds an additional cycle of approximately 12 months. So these two kind of coincide.
Interesting.
Such that the poles are sometimes up to 37 feet away from their average location. So around 10 meters.
Okay. So a difference, but not really a discernible difference.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing
part.
that's interesting and something we keep track of.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything for the layperson, right? For you and me, it's no big deal. Now, as I alluded...
It's not going to mess up our compasses or whatever.
No. Now, as I alluded to earlier, other lesser-known poles, well, I suppose a few of them fit into this section, more or less, more so than they would later. So including the geographic poles, there are actually at least 9 north and south poles, or up to 11 or more if you include both physical objects and mythical locations.
Okay.
Right? Let's talk about some poles real quick that don't really exist, but are basically just pure concepts. Poles of inaccessibility. These mark the most difficult places to reach, or places furthest away from an agreed upon geographical feature. So often this is locations that are furthest away from the coast of any given continent.
Like Point Nemo or...
Yeah, Point Nemo is actually the example that I have lined up in my notes. So
when the nerddoms align.
Yes. You're reading my brain a little bit. Point Nemo is the Pacific Ocean point of inaccessibility. The most distant point away you can be from any landmass on Earth. 2,688 kilometers away from any land. Its closest neighbors are the Pitcairn Islands to the north, Motunui to the northeast, and Antarctica to the south. In fact, Point Nemo is so remote that, routinely, the people who travel closest to Point Nemo are the astronauts in the International Space Station.
Yes, I remember. Wait, didn't we talk about that?
When did we talk? I feel like we did talk about that at some point.
That. I don't know.
Huh.
We talked about the ISS in an episode, though.
We did.
Briefly, and we talked about Point Nemo because that's where they send down satellites.
Which is what I was going to mention again here. That Point Nemo is where the ISS will be crashed when it's decommissioned in 2030. But yeah, because the ISS...
I just finished my ISS Lego set. Well, I re-finished it. I did it when I lived in Canada in 2020. And then I took it apart when I moved to California. And then I never put it back together in California. And then I moved home and I never put it back together. So it was in multiple pieces, but it wasn't like I had to do it from scratch. But anyway.
Right.
I put that back together this week as part of my Christmas gift to myself.
Nice.
It's very nice. It's very pretty.
It's a darn good Lego set.
Yes.
But yeah, the ISS only really orbits at an average distance of between 370 and 460 kilometers above the Earth's surface, or 230 to 285 miles for those of us stuck with the imperial system. But Point Nemo is not our focus today. So we're mostly talking about the North and South poles, and while there are many poles of inaccessibility, there are only really 3 that we care about today.
Okay.
So the concept of poles of inaccessibility was originally proposed by Canadian professor Vilhjalmur Stephenson in 1920 in a paper titled The Region of Maximum Inaccessibility in the Arctic, where he was specifically arguing that the geographic North Pole is not necessarily the most difficult place to reach in the Arctic Circle, as simply being the furthest north does not mean that you're actually the furthest away from any given landmass.
Okay.
So the northern pole of inaccessibility was originally in...
And the land masses would then not include like the ice flows that are potentially over the North Pole.
Right.
It means actual like stationary land.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a confusing point we'll get to in a second. But it's... Hold on to that thought.
Okay, great.
Like, just don't let it fly away, but we don't need to open our hand quite yet to re-release that thought. The northern pole of inaccessibility was originally incorrectly calculated to be at 84 degrees north, 174 degrees, 51 minutes west. I couldn't find anywhere reputable that affirmatively attributes these calculations to anyone in particular.
Okay.
But these were the coordinates referenced as the northern pole of inaccessibility at least as early as 1928, when Australian explorer and pilot Sir Hubert Wilkins flew the first successful trans-Arctic flight. That flight is actually what got him knighted.
Oh, nice.
Some sources offhandedly mention him as being the potential originator of these incorrect coordinates as part of his flight plan.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I can't be certain of that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, most sources I found that mentioned that were kind of cagey about it.
Great.
Yeah. Now, whatever the origins of those coordinates, they were generally accepted until 2013,
Wow.
when Cambridge University Press published a paper titled Finding the Arctic Pole of Inaccessibility, very on the nose, where they provided corrected coordinates of 85 degrees 48 minutes north by 176 degrees 9 minutes east.
Okay.
Which is a difference of over 200 kilometers.
Jeez.
These calculations were made using more modern GPS and satellite technology, and these coordinates are in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, approximately 662 kilometers, or 411 miles, south of the geographic North Pole.
Interesting.
Yes. So it's...
On which side?
In the Eastern Hemisphere.
Okay.
Yes.
But it makes sense that it would take modern technology also to get a really accurate read on that.
But also considering how accurate some earlier calculations were of other such points, also a little odd.
Yeah.
The southern pole of inaccessibility is a bit weird, however. We can finally let go of that thought that we had captured before it got away.
Great.
Or at least bring it back.
Okay.
Because there are kind of, technically, two southern poles of inaccessibility.
Let me guess. One is on the landmass and one is not.
Yeah, basically.
Great.
Yeah. So, if we are not taking into account the ice shelves,
okay,
right, if we're just looking at the landmass,
right,
the British Antarctic Survey calculated the coordinates to be 82 degrees, 53 minutes, 14 seconds south by 55 degrees, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds east. Now, this was in 2005, and the same survey calculated the coordinates with the addition of ice shelves, which extend the Antarctic coast, to be 83 degrees, 50 minutes, 37 seconds south by 65 degrees, 43 minutes, 30 degrees, or 30 seconds east.
Okay.
Which, being in 2005, part of the problem with this one is that the ice shelves are constantly changing, especially with climate change.
Yeah.
So if we're using the ice shelves in our calculations, that pole is constantly moving.
Right.
So while I do enjoy saying that there are two southern poles of inaccessibility, the one that doesn't move is probably the one most people should bother to hang on to.
Yeah.
The last pole that I want to mention in this section before our break is a ceremonial South Pole. There is an actual physical pole, specifically a barbershop pole with a silvered ball topper that signifies the location of the South Pole that Amundsen and Scott were originally racing to reach. In addition, the staff at Amundsen Scott South Pole Station have a tradition every January 1st since 1959 of placing a new marker on the location of the geographic South Pole as it shifts slightly. Yeah. And also it's actually built on an ice sheet on the Antarctic soil, so it additionally moves a little bit.
Right.
So these markers are made on base by the research staff during the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
So while recording this, I haven't yet seen what the new ceremonial pole marker for 2026 is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we drop this episode, I should hopefully be able to include a picture.
Cool.
Yes, hopefully.
Cool.
Fingers crossed. All right, let's take a break from the cold to huddle around the fire with some cocoa while we take a quick break.
Welcome back to Season 2. We hope you all have had a wonderful holiday season. For those who appreciate social media updates and episode reminders, please follow us on YouTube at Hyperfixation Investigations Podcast or Blue Sky at HI-podcast. So go check us out on those platforms and follow along.
And please leave a comment or review on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or even on our website. We love to hear from you, and it helps us a lot. All right, I hope you've topped off your mugs of whichever warm beverage you prefer, because we're headed back out onto the ice. Alrighty, now we get into the really weird stuff, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. Magnets get quite strange. So let's move on to the magnetic poles.
Alrighty.
To make your own compass, you do need a magnet and a piece of metal that can be made magnetic.
Okay.
And then you make that little itty-bitty piece of metal float on something so that the tip of the piece of metal will point towards either the north or south pole. Now, this works because all magnets have a north and south magnetic pole. You can just rub the north pole of a magnet onto a small metal object like a needle, and then you can turn that needle into a small, sensitive magnet with a north pole at its tip. And since magnetic opposites attract, the north pole of the needle will always point to Earth's magnetic south pole. Here's the problem. That's in the north.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm also crocheting while we do this. You're going to have to repeat that one for me.
Yes. So Earth's magnetic south pole
Yes.
is in the north.
So they have switched.
What? No, well, I mean, they've switched countless times, or thousands of times over,
Right.
Earth's history. But no, not anytime recently.
So currently, our
Yes.
geographic North Pole has a southern magnetic charge.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
However, here's the thing. The reason that is because we named the direction north and then named the north pole of a magnet north afterwards. So we named the direction, then the magnets, and went, oh yeah, it's pointing the same direction. We'll call that also north.
If
Thankfully,
they hadn't named the magnetics north and south, there would be less confusion.
yes. Yes.
Essentially.
Part of the problem is that we're just using the same words to describe different things, and they happen to be opposite. Thankfully, generally speaking, scientists have agreed that this is stupid, and unless we really need to be extremely pedantic about things, there's no point confusing everyone all the damn time. So unless I'm being annoyingly pedantic, I will henceforth be doing as most everyone does and referring to the magnetic pole that exists in the northern hemisphere as Earth's north magnetic pole.
Great.
And the magnetic pole that exists in the southern hemisphere as Earth's south magnetic pole. It's just easier this way. Everyone actually understands what the hell you're saying, even though it is, again,
Technically
and
wrong.
hilariously wrong.
I love that.
Yes. Now, various sources indicate that the first compasses were constructed in approximately the 2nd century BCE in China during the Han Dynasty.
Okay.
However, these so-called south-pointing spoons seem to have been primarily for spiritual guidance
Interesting.
and were not necessarily made for navigation until potentially sometime around the 11th or 12th century, which is around the same time European sailors began using compasses for the same purpose.
Do we know were they created independently of each other, or were they traded, the technology traded, or...
Supposedly and seemingly they were invented independently for
It's
navigational
possible.
purposes.
It's happened before.
Yes. I wouldn't be too surprised, but also I didn't specifically do too much of a deep dive on that
Sure.
detail, so I can't be 100% certain.
Yeah.
But from the little bit that I did find on that, it seems like they were,
Independent.
yeah, they just kind of coincided on the timing, more or less. Either way, by the 15th century, navigators knew that compasses don't actually point directly north or perfectly south, but rather to a spot pretty close. Yeah,
It's
so
close enough.
that's the other thing. The north and south magnetic poles do not, in fact, care one bit about geography. The National Oceanic and
It's
Atmospheric
almost like-
Administration.
They're not caused by the geography.
Yeah, I mean, well, not the topography,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because Earth's magnetic field is generated by the iron-nickel core
Right.
at the center of the Earth, spinning around underneath the molten mantle.
Which is why we have poles.
Right. And it happens to be more or less in alignment with the Earth's axis because, well,
It's
the
also
Earth
a
is...
sphere, and it's all on the same axis.
Right. It's all spinning in the
Yeah.
same direction, so it works out. It's just, it doesn't quite match perfectly.
Yeah.
So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration
Mhm.
lists the 2026 location of the North Magnetic Pole as being approximately 85.5 degrees north, 135.9 degrees east, which is approximately 500 kilometers from the geographic North Pole. What's even stranger is that the magnetic South Pole is not directly oppositely located.
Oh.
Yes. This one I feel like may actually be more startling to people.
Yeah.
The magnetic South Pole is in fact listed by NOAA for 2026 as being approximately 63.8 degrees south, 135 degrees east, which is over 2,900 kilometers away from the geographic South Pole. Both magnetic poles actually are, eagle-eared listeners may have noticed, in the eastern hemisphere.
Yeah.
And the South Pole is much further from the South Pole than the North Pole is from the North Pole, which is a sentence I just said. And as I alluded to, they are both moving.
Yes.
They're constantly moving. The North Magnetic Pole is traveling towards Siberia. It used to be in northern Canada.
Sure.
Meanwhile...
So will then it just like come back around eventually?
Yeah, more or less, probably. They're just kind of meandering.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the South Magnetic Pole is slowly moving vaguely towards Australia. There is, of course, some concern over a potential magnetic pole reversal, since, the poles have switched thousands of times throughout the history of the planet. I think that there's probably some apocalypse movie out there somewhere about the sudden and violent flipping of the poles and the chaos that would undoubtedly inflict upon countless electronic devices that we use in our daily life for the basic function of most of our society. Not to mention, of course, mass extinction probably that comes along with every disaster movie.
Right.
The big problem with that idea that I really need to be very clear and loud about is that we don't actually know if magnetic pole reversal
does anything.
Well, we don't know if it's imminent at all,
and
we don't know how long it takes to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, yes, sure, it would likely mess with our own navigational equipment, and it would mess with the migratory patterns of birds, but the Earth has never been consistent in how often the poles flip.
Right.
So it's not really something we can predict easily. It may be as few as 10,000 years between reversals.
And we don't know exactly what causes it either, right?
No, it's just kind of it happens sometimes, and it happens a lot.
Yeah.
Or at least I did not in my research encounter a known reason.
The cord just does 360 north to south turn inside the mantle.
Oh, God. I'm sure
Somebody's theorized that.
I'm sure somebody's done that in a D&D game.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure somebody else has also theorized that it has something to do with solar flares.
Oh, yeah.
Since the magnetic
field of Earth deflects a lot of solar flares and wind
Jupiter gets too close to us for a little while.
Yeah, of course. Most of that I don't think has any merit to it.
No, I'm just spitballing for the shit of it. Yeah.
Right. It's the classic thing that a lot of, B sci-fi movies would go, yes, that's the reason.
Yeah.
But it may take up to 50 million years before the poles decide it's time to flip-flop.
Right.
And on top of that, the calculations trying to figure out how long the poles would take to flip once they began, the shortest possible time frame that I've seen is centuries.
Okay.
With longer estimates taking up to 10,000 years.
So then we would see it starting to move. Instead of just moving further east, it would start moving, the North Pole would start moving south.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we would see it happening the way we're seeing it migrate east.
Which, they are both migrating a little bit inwards, but it's not at a rate that is necessarily concerning.
Yeah.
It's just, they're both kind of moving towards each other a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to flip. They move.
Right.
They move.
Well, because it's like a ball bearing in a lava lamp.
Yes.
Essentially. the core,
Yeah.
which controls it. So
yeah, if the poles flipped, yeah, it'd be weird. Migratory birds would be upset. At least for our part,
yeah.
we would have, even at worst, plenty of time to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actually something that keeps me up at night.
No.
No.
I suspect we'll be gone before it matters.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of my mentality as well. This won't be a problem, at least not for us.
Right.
Now, to make things even more confusing,
Oh, good.
the next poles on my list to talk about are also magnetic poles, kind of, in that they only kind of actually, well, they don't really exist.
Great. Explain yourself.
So the geomagnetic poles.
Okay.
Yes.
The Earth magnetic poles.
Right.
The geomagnetic poles.
Earth has magnetic poles.
Yes.
We also have what are called geomagnetic poles.
Are they related to the topography instead of the core?
It's kind of, yeah.
Great, okay.
It's a mathematical approximation of the Earth's poles and like where they would be based on if hypothetically the Earth's core was actually just a quite large rectangular bar magnet. And as I understand it, the general purpose of the geomagnetic poles, specifically the reason people care about
I was
this,
going to say, why the fuck?
it's to provide a reasonably simple yet reliably accurate enough approximation of the Earth's actual magnetic field and poles for the sake of most simple calculations.
Okay.
Like we don't necessarily need to take into account how far the actual pole is moving in a particular direction if we're just trying to figure out the general path that some solar wind energy is going to take. If we don't need to be like perfectly precise, it's just
So like
we're
when
getting
they're
a general
trying to
picture.
predict where the auroras are going to end up, they would likely use this.
Yes.
Okay. I suppose that makes sense.
And it also just provides a much easier visual.
Yeah.
Again, for simple calculations, you're going to use this instead of the true magnetic poles.
Right.
Funnily enough, based on current models,
Yeah.
the geomagnetic North Pole is currently at 80.85 degrees north, 72.76 degrees west.
I really wish we had a longitude-latitude map right now.
It would make things so
that
much
I
easier.
could be looking. I'm such a visual person, and I'm like, have the vaguest idea of what's going on.
No, I'll try to find a reasonably good diagram or picture of at least most of these.
Or just a good map, and we can put them on ourselves.
Yeah,
or
that's
something.
That's my hope. That is more than 1,400 kilometers or 870 miles from the North Magnetic Pole. And on top of that, it's also over 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles from the geographic North Pole.
In the same direction?
Yes. And then the South Geomagnetic Pole is actually over 2,000 kilometers away from the magnetic South Pole.
Which is already like 2,000 kilometers away from the geographic South Pole.
Yes. Part of the difference there, and part of the reason that the geomagnetic South Pole is so much further from the geomagnetic.
Yeah.
It again comes down to the actual magnetic South Pole is just further away, but also because the geomagnetic pole model assumes that these are actually antipodal points. That these are actually on directly opposite ends of the Earth.
Right, which they're not.
Right.
As we've just explained.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's complicating things again by simplifying them.
Great. Well, and then there's the added additional complication for the geographic South and North poles, especially the South Pole. Well, even for the North Pole, given that they're both on plates and the plates are moving.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily move. Well, I guess that does move the geographic point. That doesn't move the true magnetic point, but it does move the geographic point.
Yeah, which again, the Amundsen Scott South Pole Research Station staff.
Right.
They put a new one in the ground every year. All right, where is it now? Here it is. Put a new one in.
It would be interesting to see a picture of how far away those things are from each other now.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if they leave the old ones in.
Oh, they
at
should,
the end of the year.
though.
They should. I don't know for sure. Now, I could probably...
Then again, I'm like, how do you take a giant barbershop pole out of the ice that never melts?
Oh, that one they just leave there. That one, that's where Amundsen and Scott were racing to.
Right.
So they went, okay, this is that location. And then wherever...
Separately, the geographic pole is...
Yes, separately.
Got it.
They mark a new stake every year. But yeah, all that is to say, there's a lot of theoretical poles that we rely on for navigation and a lot of real ones that we kind of barely acknowledge unless it's convenient.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't even need to get started on the North Star for navigation. That's its own episode.
Oh, Polaris. Oh, and then of course, lastly, the Christmas crowd has probably been waiting for Santa's North Pole workshop.
Yes.
But, the whole point of Santa's North Pole workshop is kind of being hidden from the rest of the world. So I don't know for sure which North Pole it's supposed to be at.
The magnetic North Pole that's actually in the south.
That would be the funniest option.
Okay, there's a landmass there. That
Yes.
makes more sense to me than the fucking ice sheets in the Arctic.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Well, and also it's hysterical how many movies love to put penguins and pine trees at Santa's North Pole, which doesn't make any sense on an ice floe.
Yeah.
And that's not even getting into, it would make more sense.
In reality, it's a different realm, but we can't get into that.
No. I think NORAD typically has, how NORAD has Santa Tracker. I think they have him starting at the geographic North Pole. But that doesn't really make sense because if Santa's trying to stay hidden, wouldn't he want to stay at the northern pole of inaccessibility?
Maybe it's like Atlantis and it's under the ocean.
That's fair. I think, however, there were submarine voyages to the North Pole. Geographic pole, that is.
He has magic.
Yeah. Again, everything is invalidated by, he did magic about it. And that's not even really getting into the fact that there is, of course, an official Santa Claus village in Lapland, Finland, that claims to be the actual real hometown of Santa, even though I'm pretty sure the historical Saint
Nicholas?
What? No. It's just of Santa.
Okay.
Yes. Even though I'm pretty sure Saint Nicholas was a Greek born in Turkey.
Right. And the idea that Santa is St. Nicholas is very Judeo-Christian centered, and I don't really care about that one way or the other.
No.
Especially because there are a lot of other pagan representations of Santa that have existed beforehand.
It's just a funny layer.
That's also a whole conversation for another day that we will not get into today.
Yes. It's just a funny layer to add on of who are you, which one is what? But also, I don't really have anything else today.
Okay.
So.
Great.
Thanks for listening, guys. That's the North Pole and the North Pole. And the other North Pole, and various South Poles. Yes.
And a great way to guide the rest of our season.
Yeah.
Now that we're back. That's a wrap on episode 28, Many North Poles. If you'd like to delve further into this topic, our research sources and related images are posted on our website, hyperfixation-investigations.com. Again, that is www.hyperfixation-investigations.com. Thank you so much for listening.
Follow us on social media for updates and stay tuned on our various platforms and website for news and upcoming perks.
See you next time. And remember, what's a little info dumping between friends?